Okay. Hello, my name is David Temple, and you're here in the Paleo Lab at the Houston Museum of Natural Science. And we'll be entertaining your questions and inquiries today. It'll be myself and my lab tech, Ryan,
Hi.
that will be on camera today. And just as a way of starting out, one of the projects that I'm working on right now, this is one of the best parts about my job, is that I'm coming up with a pitch to redo one of our paleo halls, the one that's in Sugarland. So it's an idea. We can come up with a lot of ideas, a lot of different things, a lot of kind of cool ideas. And then, of course, you get to pitch them, and then some get picked, some don't get picked. But it's all part of sort of the fundraising campaign for that particular hall. So this is one of the ideas I had. And I don't know if anybody here has ever heard of candling an egg, but this is a little oviraptor that supposedly would be like embryonic or just about to hatch. And I love this model. I don't know that it's actually based in any actual fossils. It's not a scan, but it's just the work of a very talented creator. And so we had it 3D printed. And of course, the idea is that this would be in the oviraptor egg, and then visitors or children would come by and flip a switch. And of course, it would be illuminated from the back. And of course, the super cool thing would be A, not just one, maybe a whole nest of them. And then B, once they flip that switch, the contents of the egg react to the light. So they don't really move, but maybe they just twitch a little bit. So we haven't figured out the twitch part yet, but this is an idea which hopefully I think people would respond to nicely. But I love this little model. I think it's really, really well done. And so we're looking at a lot of new kind of 3D printed things for the hall, including some little dinosaurs and things that are based on measured drawings and things. So I'm amazed with everything that's out there that you can 3D print. And in paleo, there's a lot of course, very interesting things.
So one more time, what was that? What is this?
This is a baby oviraptor who would be in the egg. And I think it's 1-to-1 scale. We'll have to go back and check the measurements and also check the eggs. I don't think we have any measurements from the actual animal, but we do know the eggs. We have lots of the eggs. Of course, it has to be at such a scale that the thing's going to fit in the egg. We know that from the O.J. Simpson trials. If it does not fit, you must acquit. Of course, that was talking about a glove. In this case, we're talking about a model of a dinosaur in the egg. But of course, we can scale it. We can do it pretty much any size we want.
That is an oviraptor.
Yes, look at him. Look at his little toes. Look at those toes. Everybody loves the toes of babies. Toes and fingers. Look at those tiny toes.
Look at him. He's holding him.
Yes.
He's holding my finger.
Yes. I think David Byrne did a song about that. The Talking Heads did a song about that.
Say yes, it's an oviraptor. Someone asked.
Yes, it is a baby oviraptor. Which the adults get pretty large. And they're named oviraptor. It's kind of a misnomer. People think it's like a raptor type dinosaur, but it's not. It was thought as an egg thief. And then years later, when it was first found, they thought it was raiding the nests and eating the eggs. Then years later, of course, they discovered that no, those in fact were their nests. And that's the current philosophy on that.
I did get a question
Okay.
from user Butter on my shirt.
Okay.
Are there beaks fully formed in the egg too?
That's an excellent question. And I would have to say at an embryonic level, yeah. And this one does appear to have the little beak. But of course, and to be honest, I don't know how close this is to hatching, but it's pretty close.
That was a good question.
Can I ask one question real quick?
Sure.
We got Ryan. I'm going to get close to Ryan's mic so people can hear the question. It's kind of, I don't know if it's a silly question or not, but do we have any tree sap mosquitoes that can bring the dinosaurs back?
No, we don't. So unfortunately, DNA is kind of tricksy and it doesn't really like to hang out for that long. Even if you were able to somehow, we've all seen that famous kind of expositionary scene in Jurassic Park, right? Where they get the needle through the amber and he's drilling in and he gets to the mosquito to draw it out. Even if you were able to get to the insect inside, it is highly unlikely that that insect is still fleshy and you could extract any kind of blood from it. Even if it was the case that you do have a mosquito in amber that may be fleshy, right? And that's such an astronomical situation, it probably wouldn't happen. There's only a handful of mosquitoes, at least species alive today, that actually bite and draw blood. And of those, only the females bite and draw blood. And once the blood is in the mosquito, it is actively breaking that down to use the proteins to help lay eggs. So it's not like the blood is just being stored away in kind of a canister. It is actively being broken down biologically. Once the animal is dead and it's encased in amber, there's really no guarantee that the DNA would even be viable anyway. So
Say it's not a silly question.
it's not a silly question. It's a valid one.
Someone just asked, what about the praying mantis that was recently found in amber? Did
Right.
we learn anything from that?
So I've seen the photos of that. As far as I know, what we learned from that is probably in the realm of paleoentomology. So people who study praying mantis probably learned a lot about that particular prehistoric mantis. I am not a paleoentomologist, so I don't know if we learned anything from it in particular, but I'm sure those who study those animals are probably very excited about that find.
And most entomologists are kind of very interesting people. I've known a few, and one of the ways that you authenticate amber is amber is counterfeited a lot, and so they're so good at their insects, they can authenticate the amber by looking at the contents of the amber, and they can tell the difference from, say, a tiny flat-footed beetle. Is this a modern one or is it the ancient form? So they're able to look at the insects in the amber and be able to say, no, this is reconstituted amber where they just put some modern insects in there, vis-a-vis that. So one of the world's experts on that is a guy by the name of Dave Grimaldi. Of course, he's at the American Museum of Natural History, and he's got a very nice book on the subject, which is sort of the authoritative tome on fossil insects, evolutionary trends in insects.
Here's a question. Can I interrupt a little?
Yeah.
This person in the comments is being kind of silly, and I'm speaking up so the mics can hear me. What is the paleontological significance, if any, of animals flatulating? Is there evidence of dinosaurs?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, there's even a hypothesis that they caused global warming that brought about their own demise.
That's awesome.
So here's the thing. One of the ways to know that, and there's sort of a story that relates to HMNS with that, has to deal primarily with our Diplodocus. And so one of the ways you know, and one of the things you can tell about herbivores is the larger and the broader their rib cage is, the more digestive area they have for processing plants. And of course, the more plants they process, the more flatulence they have. So that we know that today, and that's very important. But when they excavated Diplodocus, they didn't bring the ribs. He didn't bother with the ribs because they thought the ribs were more trouble than they were worth. So in 2002, we found Utterback's hole on the Red Fork of the Powder River, and we took a sort of a trip up there to look and see if there was anything left in the hole, like ribs, that he left behind that he didn't collect. And there was a lot. It was obviously a big hole there, and there were lots and lots of bone fragments that were probably part of our Diplodocus, but there were no ribs there. And one of the best ways to look at it, if you come to Houston and you see our Triceratops Lane, Lane has got this huge rib cage, huge rib cage. And you look at some other people's Triceratops, and they don't necessarily have that big a rib cage. The rib cages are more in tight, and that's because in some cases they would restore Triceratops mounts with duckbill ribs. And the duckbill, of course, looks very, very different. So the ribs are more in tight along the body line. And if you take the head off of our Triceratops off Lane, it looks comical. It looks like a beach ball. The ribs are so big, it looks like a big ball. But yes, dinosaur flatulence absolutely was a thing. I don't know how we could document it, but it was very significant. And probably the herbivore poop or herbivore odor might not have smelled that bad, but flatulence from say something like a tyrannosaur would have probably made you vomit, and it would have made your eyes water, and it would have been horrible. You would have been gasping for breath. But the herbivores, it probably wasn't all that bad. Kind of just the idea, of course, is like modern herbivores, like cows and horses and things like that. And I don't know if you ever had to ride behind those things. They do flatulate a lot.
Do you have another I got a question if you
Go ahead. No,
Okay.
go ahead.
So I'm going to get close to a microphone again. I'm going to show David here as I ask. It's a change up, Ryan.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
I touched your shoulder so gingerly. Good question here. Have there been any remains of different animals that have died in the stomachs of carnivores?
Ooh,
There
we'll know that.
is fossil evidence that we have for dietary preferences. So finding fossils within fossils of things that were presumed to have been eaten. In terms of, are there any fossils of something that's been swallowed alive? The Green River has examples, Green River Formation has examples of fossil fish that literally died choking to death trying to swallow other fish whole. So we actually have one of those in our museum on exhibit. In terms of finding stomach contents, yeah, there are other cases of that, although they weren't whole. Recently, there was a case where I think it was a Gorgosaurus up in Canada that was found that had another dinosaur's, essentially its leg in its stomach. So it liked eating legs. You know, who doesn't like a good chicken or a turkey leg, right? So it had one of those. And then one of my favorite fossil sites that belongs to the dinosaur Coelophysis. This is a Coelophysis skull cast, right? The Ghost Ranch site. There are some examples of stomach contents there. It was originally thought that they were actually baby Coelophysis, so there may have been some cannibalism. It's now understood that it's probably another small reptile that got swallowed up. And if you've ever seen or been around, if you've been lucky enough to see one in person, these Coelophysis death blocks, you would know when I say they're really confusing. So it doesn't surprise me that it got mixed up that way.
Do you have a question, Mike, or I've got another one?
No, go ahead.
Again, I'm getting closer to a microphone here so we can hear.
Okay.
Hey, I'm hosting. Well, I'm not hosting. I'm running.
Okay.
Hey, David. So here's a question here. It says, is it true that Houston was underwater during the Cretaceous?
Yes.
There you go. Short and sweet.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's one of the reasons why all the kids come to the museum and they want to find dinosaurs. And I actually got in a huge fight with a kid one time talking to them because he said he found dinosaurs in his yard and he would not give it up. And I'm explaining, well, you'll find Pleistocene things here. And then later, of course, his mom came to me later and said, well, we did bury dinosaur bones in the backyard for him to find. So we were kind of both right. He did find them here, but they weren't naturally deposited. They were sort of an artifact.
I'm just getting close to Ryan's mic. That kid,
Sure.
did you actually beat him up? Or
No, but he was, I mean, petulant about it. Like, absolutely no, dinosaurs lived in Houston. You can find dinosaurs in Houston. And in fact, he did, but normally what you find are things, sloths, mammoths, mastodons, all sorts of the Pleistocene fauna.
Can I pick this up?
Sure.
What are the measurements of this? Do you know?
It looks to be about 9 or 10 inches long.
Yeah, you got my hand. I'm 6'1". Here's my hand. Flex. Yeah. My 6'1" flex. You probably can't hear me because I'm not near my microphone. You said about 9 inches, probably.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we may need to scale it, but that's just sort of the, proof of concept.
Right.
I got some questions rolling in. All right, so they're asking, and I'm sure you hear this a lot, but I still think it's a fair question. All right, let me get close to the mic here. So the question is,
Aries.
what are you guys' favorite dinosaurs?
That's a good one.
Oh my gosh. You know what?
That's a good one.
I'm going to set Ryan up for this one because ever since Ryan has worked here, he's actually run sort of a statistic thing as a common question we ask people. And he's now gotten to the point where he has a big enough sample. He's actually looking at it and trying to generate a study, possibly even publish a paper on that exact topic. So by polling our guests, he's got some very interesting ideas. So I'm going to direct you that way.
Yeah, before I show off some of the cool statistics, I will answer it. I showed it off a second ago. My favorite dinosaur is Coelophysis. I was very lucky that several years ago I got to do work at Ghost Ranch around the Coelophysis blocks. I do a lot of work in the Triassic, so this is kind of the stereotypical Triassic dinosaur, so it is my favorite. And then that question, what is your favorite dinosaur? So he's right. I have been collecting a tally of favorite dinosaurs since 2017, and I have asked just about as many people as I can. I'm not just museum guests, although they make up the bulk of it. Waiters, waitresses, bartenders, in classes I taught, so kids that I was working with, things like that. So I've taken that data and I've made a bunch of little histograms and data analyses charts. So I have a few of them actually up on screen, kind of looking at changes in data. I can pull up some of the just spreadsheets with stuff on them. So we're not just looking at just total amount favorite dinosaur, but also kind of what does that mean for museums and programs and things like that? What can we learn from that? So that's a 2024 updated list right there. And if anyone's wondering, the reigning king of what is your favorite dinosaur is the Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Yeah, that tracks.
No surprise there.
That's on brand. 471 people replied T-Rex.
Yeah.
What's the next runner-up?
Probably Triceratops, at least at this point where we stopped collecting data for this round was 171. So it's not even close on second place.
Wow. Someone says their favorite is the Stegosaurus.
Well, there you go. I'll have to update it.
You'll have to add that to the
Yeah.
list.
Yep, science is being done right now.
Yeah.
I got a question.
Okay.
Unless you.
Well, I was hoping to hear David's favorite dinosaur.
Oh, sure, yes.
Oh, well, I have to watch what I say because I don't want to make any of the dinosaurs out in the halls angry. Because if I don't pick one of those, it gets to be a problem. And as you know, if you have many children, if you single one of them out and pick that child, then you have another problem.
That's fair.
But I have to say, I'm very, it was Houston's first dinosaur, and it was the dinosaur here when I started 35 years ago. It was the only one we had, and that would be the Diplodocus
Diplodocus.
or Gallimimus.
So.
Someone loves your hat, by the way. Your
Oh yeah,
tribal hat.
y'all's outfits are getting some
Yeah,
hits
people
here.
are into it.
So let me get close to a microphone because I have a question here from Scott. He's up in Indiana. Do you know of any common finds in Indiana? Is Indiana a good place to look for dinosaurs?
I don't know any personally.
Trilobites.
I guess trilobites would be good, yeah.
I don't know about vertebrate stuff. Vertebrate stuff, they probably have mammals and things like that, Pleistocene. But I know trilobites, they've got some good Paleozoic up there.
Do you know what's a good subject? So I know, unless I'm stepping on your toes, Mike.
Nope, you're good.
Mike is over here going live on HMNS TikTok. So if you're not subscribed to us on TikTok, go subscribe there. So this question gets asked, not necessarily in this case. Who asked the questions? I forget. Philomosity. So we get this question a lot, not just from this guy, or necessarily from this guy, but speaking to the early, like the late 1800s, Marsh and all that, and there were some forgeries of dinosaur bones. Mm-hmm. Can you speak to why some people might still think dinosaurs weren't real because of some shenanigans in the early 1900s, maybe?
Maybe, but I have a funny feeling that any answer I give was going to be it'll be controversial, but I think it's probably because essentially the belief in a young Earth, that the Earth is not 4-point-something billion years old, but it's only 10,000 years old, and what people might do to prove that it was much older, or conversely prove that it was not as old. So we get that question a lot, and actually it really bothers me. One of the things that people always ask at our window is, how much of this stuff is real? What's real? And so in many cases, dinosaurs, of course, they're not found completely. They're found in fragments or pieces. But of course, like for instance, T-Rex, the very first one, they essentially found half of a T-Rex, and they could reconstruct it as a big theropod. And then, of course, a few years later, they found the leg, or actually, I think they found the legs first, and the part of the tail and the pelvis. And then years later, they found the head, the skull. And it was the same dinosaur, but they just knew that they went together. And that process is continually being revised, continually being updated as more fossils are found. And what they're finding is this one is just like this other dinosaur they found, but it more completes the picture. So we work a lot with Dimetrodon here, and that's something that finding Dimetrodon feet and finding Dimetrodon tails is extremely rare and extremely difficult. There's not many of them that have ever been found. So reconstructing a mount of one, you have to rely on the work that other people have done, and so maybe then you either model the tail or you model or scan and print or mold, make a cast copy of the pieces that you don't have. And another thing that goes with it that's very handy is that vertebrates are bilaterally symmetrical. So for instance, on one of the Dimetrodons we're working on, this part of the skull is perfectly preserved, great teeth, everything. This part of the skull behaved very similarly to maybe wet Wonder Bread or maybe cigarette ash. It was very punky, very porous. It didn't preserve well at all. So what you can do, of course, is scan the side that's preserved strongly, flip it, and then use that to restore the other side. So, so most all the fossils out there have some degree of restoration on them.
I got to ask one more question, then I gotta go pick up my son and leave it on the TikTok stream. So if y'all caught that, the YouTube stream is about to end here because I have to pick up my kid. But it's going to continue on TikTok. Is that right, Mike?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Mike is on TikTok right now with the live stream, and it will continue over there in Houston Museum of Natural Science TikTok. It's Houston Museum NS, on TikTok. So go follow us over there to continue the live stream. But my last question before I leave here is on the subject of completeness of specimens. How complete is our Triceratops?
Ooh, that kind of, we usually say somewhere between 80 to around 85% complete.
Yeah.
We actually do have a skeletal map that I've seen that shows what elements were recovered versus what elements were essentially restored. And it was one of those things where when you see the map and you stand out in front of the Triceratops, you're like, whoa, that's a whole lot of it. So it's about 80 to 85%.
Yeah, it currently is the most complete one known. And before this one was found, the previous one, whose name is Kelsey, we have a cast of that one at our Sugar Land location. It was just over 50%, and that made it the #1 specimen in the world for a number of years. So Triceratops, they're not necessarily as complete as some people might think. Part of that is due, you can find the bodies. I've been out digging and we've found bodies, but you never tend to find, and I've been digging where we found the skulls, but you never tend to find the skull and the body together. Now on Lane, one of the things, and we have the bones, but part of the frill, there was a big chunk of the frill that was essentially like gravel. So we actually do have those pieces, but rather than restore them, they used the frill of another Triceratops to repair those pieces. So that part is composited in. But all the rest of it, the feet, they're amazingly preserved. And it has all those ribs, which is something that they rarely find, and it just really changes how the animal looks.
Let me sign off of YouTube real quick. Hope you all enjoyed that. I'm signing off of YouTube here. We're still in the Paleo Lab. Go check out the TikTok. Mike is still rolling on TikTok. Houston Museum NS on TikTok. I don't even know if you need to subscribe to TikTok to watch the stream. I think you could just click on it.
Jump on there.
Just jump on there. So I got to cut it short here for the YouTube. Jump over to the TikTok if you want the continuation. Thank y'all so much for watching. Come visit us at the Houston Museum of Natural Science, and I'll talk to y'all later with some more cool stuff. Peace, y'all. Now the awkward moment where I shut it down.
All right, and I have a couple questions. Thanks, Johnny.